the rectification of buying power of seniors who are between 65 and 74, which has been amputated arbitrarily by the Liberals in their own budget, and against which Andréane is carrying C319, which also has as virtue going from $5,000 to $6,600 a retired person can gain before getting their additional income. The second law, which is also part of the requirements and on the same level as C282, which excludes the management of offer for any negotiations, commercial negotiations. I repeat, our job is to serve Quebecers. Triggering an election or stopping an election is not our motivation. We must obtain the irreversible start. No nice coffees, no promises, the irreversible start. So what I mean is a series of steps that go from the royal recommendation in the case of 3309 and the adoption in the Senate. And so irreversible start of C319 and C282. You, of course, know the nature of these legislations. If those two legislations are not established, so those two bills, are not done irreversibly by October 29, 2024, the Bloc will negotiate based on the fact that the government would have refused to have been useful to Quebecers on fundamental issues and will start discussions with other oppositions to reverse the government. Of course, this involves our behavior in the interval. There is no situation that puts into cause the confidence towards the government. So there are no situations where the Bloc will vote against the interests of Quebec. There will not be any negotiations to say, give us dental insurance and we'll do that. That doesn't exist. The Bloc never votes against the interests of Quebec. And in all current active files, the government knows our position. Therefore, there will not be any surprises there. I mention for more clarity that both bills are bills initiated by the Bloc Québécois, that both bills have been supported throughout the different steps of all parties in the House of Commons, Liberals, Conservative, and NDP, that these are laws that would serve seniors and farmers, of course, from Quebec, but also those throughout Canada. And those are two bills that are close to final adoption, which would accelerate the process and establish requests that are reasonable, realizable in a delay that is also reasonable and easy to respect. There you go. Monsieur Blanchet, two things. So why October 29th specifically? And when you say irreversible, what do you mean by that? Because a bill can always be reversed by a future government. Obviously, a bill can always be reversed by a future government, but to do that, the future government needs to have the odious of doing so. And, people start getting a higher check, 10%, would have to remove it, which would be an extremely heavy position. So why the 29th is we calculated that's a reasonable time. It is entirely doable to attain the objective and the conditions that we established before October 29th. But that date also has as a virtue that it enables eventually to oppositions to trigger an election that would be sufficiently before Christmas, because nobody wants to be in a campaign throughout Christmas. So it's a kind of a date of convergence between the time it takes to get there the delay that it would require for an election, and of course the preparation. So as a sub-question, so you want from here, October 29th, you want both bills to be adopted, and you say that there you would vote of any motion of any party to reverse the government? No, I said if it was not adopted irrevocably by October 29th, we will discuss with other opposition with a goal to... Well, no, it's the question of reversing the government. Well, it seems easier for you than for me. We need a date, we need a motion, a way of doing. We'll need to see the subject, how we do it. There are many ways. For example, the way of Conservatives yesterday was not a good one. There are bad ways to try this. There are good ways to try this. And we'll have to, obviously, that it should be on the basis of something that requires of no one to sell their debt. And for seniors, why specifically? Why put your eggs in that basket? You know, seniors have told us, we don't need that money. Why are you putting almost all of your eggs in that basket? Well, we haven't spoken to the same seniors. I've spoken to a lot of seniors who are very happy, which will show short term. Now, another element is everything I've said. There's two bills from the Bloc who are very close to final adoption, if that is the desire of the parties. I think that is in itself a logical choice. And the other element, the management of offer and buying power of seniors is at the core of the requests of the Bloc. Since I've become leader in 2019, we've never deviated from that road. But in that period, the buying power of seniors, even those over 75, has been reduced, and those of 65 to 74 has been hugely reduced by not having that indexation, whereas inflation was at the worst that we've seen in a long time. For C282, why adding it to your demands? You've talked a lot about seniors and C319, and now you say there are two bills in your demands. Why add it? Is it because you've already, won on seniors? And second part of the question, because it's probably harder to accept, offer management. Is it sort of bad faith to add that as a condition that probably won't pass as much as seniors? I will remind you that to get it to the Senate, everybody or a majority of the House needs to have sent that bill to the Senate. So I talked about offer management on many times, but we've added more in the past weeks to make it as a formal demand because, and at just value, farmers have represented with Yves Perron to say, listen, you've worked so hard on this, we are so close to getting it. Will we have to start over after another election? And to the extent where it was a bill that was very advanced, like 319, we just thought it was self-evident that the government should not object significantly to having that adopted. Okay, let's go with the under question. There were two questions here. No, it was one question. It was just well formulated. My other question is, you're saying a motion like yesterday wouldn't pass. Are you, and I don't want to say paint in a corner, you won't like the expression, but are you sort of telegraphing that beyond a motion that says we don't have confidence in the House for your own reasons, it wouldn't be in the interest of Quebec? We cannot say to the Liberal government, we give you 34 days to deliver two bills and we're going to trip you up in the interval. I will say, however, be careful. If you do something that is against who we are, we're going to vote against it. And this makes the debate of the last few days that it should have been in the negotiations puerile and misadvised. If the Bloc had arrived and said, listen, this is something on, language or immigration, where we know that even without compromising on who they are, the NPD would vote with the Liberals. There is no possible motion of defiance on identity, no matter what the Conservatives say. It had to be on something that is in our nature, and we've been carrying this for 5 years, and more Social Democrat to invite with more enthusiasm the NDP to respect its own identity and its own nature as well, and not being able to oppose our bills and actually supporting our bills, which is very determining as to the delay of October 29th. Question, if you get one of the two, for example, if you get the seniors, would you be willing to give an additional delay? If I ask somebody to bring me to Quebec, I'm not accepting to end up in Drummondville. It is the whole demand, irrevocably and non-negotiably, regardless of the niceties, the nice words in the corridor, or the coffees offered. Please. Yeah. Re-challenge. Now, what Monsieur Legault asked you did weigh in the balance, and what would you tell him? Well, it did weigh in the balance, and it offered the opportunity to say what I just said. If we had said, if it was a negotiation, of course the NPD would vote with the Liberals. So I think there was an attempt to diversion or nationalistic, because in the fact, the last time I checked, the Conservatives were in the same place as Liberals in terms of transfer. They're in the same place in terms of laïcité. I think Conservatives were in the same place as Liberals in terms of contesting Law 96 against the desire of Quebec. Conservatives wanted to centralize in Ottawa for municipal transport against the request of Quebec. Conservatives wanted to make decisions in terms of housing against the demands of Quebec. And there are probably others. On top of that, I do not see how Conservatives can say 200,000 Quebecers and 500,000 Canadians, plus all farmers, we are against the demands of the Bloc, which are fundamental for your buying power, when they've been obsessing over the buying powers of Canadians. Mary Simon was visiting Quebec yesterday, and clearly in 3 years she hasn't learned French. Is it acceptable? What do you say? I imagine the big boss of all Canadians who needs an interpreter to walk around Quebec is quite surprising. She should not have been named without speaking French. She should have learned French. We understand that she will never learn French. And it's not her learning of French the problem. It's her function itself. The monarchy, almost English in nature, of the Governor General, it's archaic and it needs to be abolished. So what do you do with this nomination then? Well, the Bloc Québécois will continue asking the abolition of all practical symbol of power, linked to the English monarchy on Quebec territory.
Minister Freeland said yesterday that the government is having conversations with the NDP and Bloc on how to help seniors. Can you clarify what conversations the Bloc has had with the government on this?
Not much. It is a friendly specialty of the Liberals to say that they are having discussions and that everybody is their close friends. So far, there's been very little discussions. And as you see, there's not so much room for discussion. One thing quite important is that between now and October 29th, we could come to the conclusion that they have not used the time being offered them to successfully go forward with the projects. And then we could know in 1 week or 3 weeks that it has become impossible. And as soon as it becomes impossible, we will know what to do with it.
If the government agrees to your demands, do you promise to continue voting in confidence of the government until the fall 2025?
As I said, but it will be a pleasure to repeat that in English. What we are proposing is good for retired persons in Quebec, but also in Canada. It's good for milk and eggs and poultry product producer in Quebec, but also in Canada. So that's good for everybody. However, we will not ever support any motion or vote that would go against who we are. And who we are is well known. We will not vote in favor of something going against French language in Quebec or even in Canada. We will not vote in favor of something that would go against the collaborative of the state. We will not vote in favor of something that encourages or tolerates hatred in public speech. We will not vote in favor of something which would be bad for Quebec in terms of immigration. We will not go against who and what we are at whatever time you choose. So the government has to remain pretty careful.
What do you say about what Mr. Trudeau says every time you ask for the old age security? You're being told that you voted against the dental plan. So that doesn't seem to say that they're ready to negotiate with you if you throw an ultimatum. It's as credible as the opposite. The minister said they're open-minded. Other times they say they're in. Yesterday at question period, they denigrated the Bloc motion and they voted. So it's not the first incoherence. And it's the same prime minister who said that he was walking hand in hand with cuddles with the Quebec government. And it's not what we've seen in the past few days. That's not clear. So if you obtain what you get, I understand you're not going to vote against things that are against the government, but would you vote against motions that said we've lost confidence in the government, so that you would maintain the government in place for this question of confidence? A motion that has no subject except I am Pierre Poilievre and I want to become Justin Trudeau, will never vote for that. Your request will be expensive for a government that doesn't have a lot of room to maneuver. Have you considered compromises? People live for longer, work for longer. For example, 74 years old. Is that something that would have been considered if that was offered? At the moment where we start negotiating compromises, our meetings like this will become complete anarchy and we'll lose something fundamental, which is clarity. People understand where the Bloc is going, and that is very precious for us. And speaking of money, there is more than $10 billion a year that directly or indirectly goes in the gas and oil industry and interposed through the banks in Toronto. Obviously, that is where we need to go get the $3 billion. We're talking about an expense. I will correct here. This is a cut. Normally, the amounts given to citizens are indexed. So the government is cutting by refusing indexation over many years. And when they give part of the indexation, they reserve it to the 70 years plus. So what I'm asking is to abolish a cut and go back on a cut inflicted to those retired who are, 65 to 74. And if they want to know where the money is, then go get it in the subsidies given to oil companies.
All right, we've been listening to Bloc leader there, Yves-Francois speaking again about the agenda, making it clear for the Liberals which part of the pie and how much do they want out of the pie. The Bloc asking Liberals to approve funding for their private members' bill to raise pension payments for seniors under the age of 75. This proposed change could cost about $16 billion over the next 5 years, and that is one of the top priorities of the Bloc. Let's now bring in CTV's Rachel Oello, standing by in Ottawa, listening into what the Bloc leader is saying. Rachel, clearly, there are two major takeaways, and which are the two bills, the top priority for the Bloc at the moment for the Liberals.
Yeah, kind of a fascinating ultimatum here from Bloc leader Yves-Francois Blanchet, essentially giving the Liberals a month to act on two Bloc bills, private members' bills. One has to do with increasing seniors' pensions. The other has to do with supply management. They are basically throwing down the gauntlet here and saying the government has a month to make good progress and see that these bills are well on their way to passing. Otherwise, we're no longer going to be in a position to offer up our votes to prop you up. So really interesting here to get that timeline from the Bloc on how much longer they're willing to give the government to get back to them. He was asked there about what Freeland said yesterday, suggesting there was ongoing good conversations with both the Bloc and the NDP about their specific asks of the Liberals in exchange for their votes. And Blanchet seemed to indicate there, it was interesting to me, that those talks were few and far between, or maybe not as friendly as the Liberals have made them seem.
Indeed. And the other thing he said was that we will not vote for things that we do not stand for ever, indicating the issues that the Conservatives have been talking of and how the Bloc doesn't stand for it. So I'm wondering, does that really mean that they will not be supporting the no confidence motions that are going to be brought forward by the Conservatives, before Christmas?
I think it's really going to depend on what those motions say, and that is going to be the key deciding factor, it sounds like, for the Bloc in what they're willing to support. Now, they could also have an opportunity through their own Opposition Day motion to word something just as they want it and put that before the House and have MPs vote on it. So it's going to be a wait-and-see situation here. Clearly, this is an ongoing push from the Bloc towards the Liberals to kind of get in line and answer whether they're going to act on these two pieces of legislation. And in this minority parliament, every little bit of support the Liberals need. And so I'll be really curious to hear what the Liberals' response is to this, essentially, ultimatum from the Bloc today.
Yeah, we can expect a lot more political posturing to take place in Ottawa, but we appreciate these updates, Rachel. Thank you for joining us for the moment.
Yeah, have a good one.
You too.